Hi and welcome to another Huddle Breakdown Extra Time. I'm your host Martin Murphy, joined as ever by James, and welcome back Alan. We missed you last week, my friend. Great to see you and hope we got a run going here.
I certainly got a run going last week. That's the first and last to say about that. Yeah, I'd rather have been on the show, don't worry.
We'll quickly move on from there, because we could easily, after the match last night, get involved in all sorts of metaphor and so forth, and that's very much unworthy of us, I would suggest. So, welcome all, and I'm sure we're all eager to pick over the bones of our Champions League qualifier from last night against Kairat. Very, very disappointing night, I think, in so many ways. So we will go over that. We will also be having a look ahead to the match against Livingston, which is coming up on Saturday, 3 o'clock, I believe. Always a shocker nowadays. And then a bit of poetry corner for those hoping for a wee bit of light relief. Alan's doing it, so I wouldn't hedge my bets there, folks. So we'll see how it goes, I'm sure. But let's get right into it. And I'll come to you first of all, Alan. So you were talking to Laura, earlier in the week, and you were saying you'd be worried going over over to Kazakhstan with only a 3-goal lead, because it would still be maybe squeaky bum time over there, given what's happened in the past. Well, going over now, level pegging, 0-0. First of all, and I'll come to you as well on this, James, before we analyse the game. Are you fairly confident we'll go through? Is it 50-50 or even less than that? Where do you see the tie going and our qualification hopes?
I'd still be hopeful, because I still maintain that, especially in defence, they're not. I think they had a good night last night in terms of team organisation, but I think individually their defenders are not that great. And on their own ground where they're having to maybe come out and force it a bit more, I think it will be a different game. But it was an awful night, really. There's no dressing it up. We have seen these kinds of European performances before. Cluj, Copenhagen, Molde. The list goes on. So we have been here before, and possibly some of the reasons for it are ones that are indicative of a club that doesn't learn from the past in that respect, especially in terms of level of preparedness. I think it's compounded by Johnson's injury. I mean, we're a Johnson and then a Tierney and probably Maeda injury away from an absolute crisis on the playing side. I mean, in terms of actually having a team that I would worry about against anybody in the Premier League, even. That's how close we are to in terms of lack of depth. And one of them happened last night. Again, we talk about risk piled upon risk, and this performance, if you start to unpick it and go through the individual players, it was exactly those things. And you realise that under stressed conditions, which obviously a Champions League qualifier is, the probability of those risks manifesting are much higher than they are at home to even St Mirren. And then there's a multiplier effect that goes on in terms of the impact on the performance, and that was very much what happened last night. We'll get into was Brendan's role in all of this, Brendan Rodgers' role versus the preparedness of the team, individual players, and all that. We do like a bit of attribution, so I'm sure we can chuck plenty of blame around as well for everyone's entertainment. But yeah, it was a hugely disappointing. There's no happy clappy light side to this. It was, other than not losing, it was an abysmal performance of football, basically.
It's funny that you say that just before I come to you, James, about the not losing, because at the game, guy next to me was urging us forward, as most people, and as is my want, I was saying I'm actually more concerned we get hit in the break here at the end and actually end up losing this, even though they didn't have that many real opportunities. And as I say, when that late corner came in and came off Trusty, and headed towards goal. I just had the head in the hands. I thought, oh, here it is, and fortunately, it just landed nicely for Schmeichel there. So as you say, at least still level in the tie. So James, what's your thoughts? You still fancy us to get through, or are you a bit more morose?
Yeah, I think the loss of their wonder kid is important. I mean, that's a material, but particularly because it doesn't appear that they have significant depth. So it's a battle of two teams with no depth, apparently, or little depth, or wanting depth. So yeah, I think.
Combine.
Well, and that right. So I think that one of the risks here is that the ecosystem becomes self-perpetuating. I mean, that one would think that the reaction to this game, which is all in a microcosm of the performance and the game and the importance of it, I think that's all kind of, in bounds as far as normal. But you'd think we did lose the tie last night in some respects. I mean, it's been hair on fire stuff. And I think, we're not the game against the game was basically what I thought or I feared would manifest against Falkirk to a degree, which was, a little bit more organized. And obviously, I think they're a higher level than Falkirk, but I'm saying like the formula. So no, I think we still are. I wouldn't say comfortable favorites, but shading at favorites going over there. And the idea that we can't score a goal or two against them. And I think the big issue will come down to some of these issues that Alan's been writing about, and we've talked about, which is our susceptibility on the break and whether there's any kind of tweaks that go on and not really understanding them well enough. Cause we're newfound Kazakhstani football analysts, and certainly for Kairat Almaty trying to analyze them. So I have no sense as far as what the deficit of losing this kid that was playing and looked pretty good to me. I mean, his movement and his availability and so, but let's not over-egg this either. I mean, they did have opportunities on the break, but they kind of pulled an Aberdeen on a number of them. Right. So we're not talking about a level of opponent here where we should be afraid going over there is kind of my point. So I just worry that understandably the kind of the baked in the cake anxiety and disgust with what's going on with the transfer window is, runs the risk of, if all these players are consuming this ecosystem of horribleness that's going on right now, I could certainly see, and depending on how the weekend plays out, we'll talk about Livingston later. I worry about that more than if it was just like a normal match going over there. So, but no, it was putrid. I mean, there's no. I mean, I put up a graphic in our chat area in huddlebreakdown.com on Substack, basically showing some basic stat lines from the Riga and Sarajevo games in that horrible 2020 when we dropped down after losing to Ferencváros. I actually forgot about the Sarajevo tie. I remember the Riga one, but I don't know if it was like just damage control of my own psyche or what happened, but I'd forgotten about Sarajevo. But they were kind of similar in the sense that like level and really horrible games where we scored, I think, the 70th minute at Riga, or it was one of the other, like 70th minute and then 90th minute. Like they were relatively late scoring goals in what were 0-0. Now there we're away, and the context of that season was unique, but I just threw it out there as like, this could be what would happen if this goes wrong tonight. And well, I think it was even worse than that because our complete inability to create from open play. And that, again, that should not have been a surprise. And probably the most, I don't want to say concerning, but many of the things that Rodgers said post game that, he keeps spinning this, that we've been good up until this game. And it's like, no, we haven't. Like I've written about it, I looked at it closely. Like we haven't been creating from open play in the first 2 games. Fulcrum to a degree, but the first 2 games.
we hope you enjoyed this free preview from all of us here at the Huddle Breakdown. We know you have options and we really appreciate you tuning in. To hear the rest of this episode and for much more Huddle Breakdown content, head on over to www.huddlebreakdown.com. We hope you consider subscribing. Thank you.